Why do people often have suicidal impulses when standing at a great height? Hold on. Look at that 300-story cliff. That red dot hanging there is Alex the madman. No ropes, no way out. His life depended entirely on his fingers, desperately digging into a crevice less than a centimeter thick, thinner than the edge of your doorframe. Below him lay 900 meters of absolute emptiness. Even a gentle breeze would mean one inevitable fate: free fall, turning him into a pile of minced meat at the bottom of the rock within 10 seconds. Just seeing that image would send alarm bells through an average person's brain. It might even create the illusion of wanting to jump, using this extreme fear to force your body to immediately back away. But Alex in the video wears a slight smile. Faced with this certain death, has this human been stripped of fear? To answer this question, we must turn back the clock 140 years and see how humanity, step by step, through violence, modified its physiological hardware and psychological software in this forbidden zone of death, finally arriving here. Humans are terrestrial beings. Our blood and hearts were designed for a standard atmosphere of pressure. Before the 19th century, we naively believed that only gravity could prevent us from approaching God's abode. Until 1875, 3 French explorers recklessly rode a hot air balloon to an altitude of 8,600 meters. They thought courage could conquer all, but they didn't know that hypoxia is an invisible killer. As the balloon rose, 2 slowly collapsed, convulsed, and died. The only survivor oscillated between death and unconsciousness, finally falling back to the ground like a rag doll with the body of his companion. That day, humans paid with their lives to discover an ironclad physiological law. High altitudes are not just cold. Thin air causes tissue hypoxia, ultimately killing people. To survive up there, humans must cheat either by bringing oxygen up or by mutating bodies. In the early 20th century, Mount Everest became an altar for testing these 2 routes. From 1921 to 1924, Mallory led a British expedition that attempted to summit Mount Everest 3 times. At an altitude of nearly 9,000 meters, they were essentially testing if a human brain could remain conscious by their own bodies. In 1922, they first tried with portable oxygen. The results were immediate. Team members without oxygen walked like drunkards at 8,000 meters, their eyes glazed. Those with oxygen reached as high as 8,300 meters. Oxygen seemed to buy greater altitudes, but nature demanded a price. An avalanche instantly swallowed 7 Sherpa guides. 2 years later, Mallory made his 3rd try, carrying bulky oxygen equipment, disappeared into the clouds, and never returned. 75 years later, his body was found on the slope at 8,155 meters. His clothes were tattered, still facing the summit. Whether they truly reached the summit remains unknown. Mallory's life left a profound question mark for those who followed. Where exactly is the limit of human potential? As the White Peaks buried more and more bodies, finally in 1953, Hillary Clinton and Tenzing Norgay reached the summit. The world finally confirmed, with oxygen and advanced technology, humans could indeed stand at an altitude of nearly 9,000 meters. But human pride wouldn't stop there. In 1978, Italian climber Messner believed that using oxygen was a desecration of climbing. He made a crazy decision: to challenge Mount Everest without oxygen tanks. Doctors asserted that this wasn't a challenge, but a suicide. At that altitude, even if you survived, your brain would be turned to mush from hypoxia. He went anyway. In the final few hundred meters, he and his partner could only crawl on the snow slope, collapsing after a few steps, then pulling themselves up with sheer willpower. He felt his body being torn apart, his mind stripped away, leaving only a pair of gasping lungs. But they succeeded. This feat turns out that humans, after extreme domestication, really can survive in death zones. However, while climbers were struggling against their physical limits with sheer willpower, scientists discovered an even more embarrassing fact. The so-called fair competition at high altitudes was actually an unfairness written into their genes. While Western climbers had to catch their breath after every step at 8,000 meters, The Sherpas of the Himalayas treated it like their own backyard. Research found that Sherpas possess a gene variant called EPAS1. When ordinary people face hypoxia, their bodies overproduce red blood cells, turning blood thick like sludge, easily leading to blood clots and heart failure. However, this Sherpa gene blocks this overreaction, keeping blood thinner while allowing mitochondria to more efficiently extract every molecule of oxygen. They can make dozens of trips to and from Everest, commuting between 5,000 and 8,000 meters, carrying oxygen, setting up ropes, and clearing paths for climbers worldwide. However, in Western stories, their names often only appear at the apex. This is an evolutionary cheat code. Humans have spent tens of thousands of years to rewrite their genetic adaptations to altitude. But suffocation is merely a physical hardware lock. Once we finally learn to negotiate with the air, the next, more formidable adversary is just emerging. The software program deep within our brains, fear. Back to that 900-meter rock face. Many who watched free solo climbing instinctively ask, is a piece of this guy's brain missing? Neuroscientists wanted to know the answer too. In 2016, they put Alex into an fMRI scanner and showed him a series of extremely gory and dangerous images. In an average person's amygdala, the alarm center responsible for fear, it would explode like fireworks under such stimulation. But in Alex's brain, this area was almost completely silent. So silent that researchers initially thought the machine had malfunctioned. Does this mean he was born without fear? No, scientists discovered another clue. His fear threshold is extremely high, and he has an incredibly powerful prefrontal cortex for regulation. He wasn't without fear. Rather, he had forcibly rewritten his brain's response program. He prepared for this climb for 8 years. He spent hundreds of hours climbing with ropes, memorizing thousands of handholds and footholds on the rock face. Countless repetitions moved all movements from the thinking prefrontal cortex down to the automatic cerebellum and basal ganglia. This is an extreme version of systematic desensitization. Through a series of controlled dangers, it teaches the brain that as long as each step is calculated, death will not come. By the time he finally unclipped the rope, the fear didn't disappear. Instead, it was like a thin undercurrent, suppressed by an even greater focus and calculation. And when the ultimate skill controlled the deadly risk, and the fear was just right, flow state emerged. In the flow, the world mutes, time disappears. There is no past, no future, only this rock, this breath. That's also why what was once a sport for a tiny few is now becoming redemption for more ordinary people in urban climbing gyms. On the inner walls, phones off, social disconnected, humans detach themselves from complex social webs, returning to the simplest things, breathing, gripping, and balancing. From the suffocation of high altitudes to the terror of rock faces, the Creator has inscribed no passage in our blood and brains. But what makes us human is our refusal to obey. We use oxygen tanks, genetic mutations, and systematic desensitization to carve out a path to survival from the dead. When Mallory was asked why he climbed mountains, he famously replied, "Because it's there." If we were to add a footnote to that statement, perhaps it would be, humans are born to look up at them. Gravity is an ironclad law, fear is instinct, but humanity is destined to repeatedly reach that impossible height, looking up and saying, "Upward, ever upward."